There is a place in the middle of the Indian Ocean where the water changes color slowly. It is thinking. Deep blue turns to turquoise, and turquoise turns to a pale, glassy green, until it meets a shore so soft and so white that it barely seems real. This is Mauritius, and if you did not know anything about it, you might believe it was simply a paradise, and nothing more. The plane descends slowly over the reef. From above, you can see the coral lying just beneath the surface, a quiet ring protecting the island from the open ocean beyond. The water inside that ring is calm, almost still. Palm trees lean gently in the wind, unhurried, the way things move when there is nowhere else they need to be. For a moment, just breathe this in. The air here smells like salt and sugarcane, and something faintly sweet, like vanilla carried on the breeze from somewhere inland. This is an island that has always welcomed travelers. Dutch sailors first wrote of it, naming it after a prince, before leaving it behind. French planters later called it home, bringing sugar and coffee, and the first roads that ever crossed its hills. British hands shaped its laws, its language of business, and much of its administration. And Indian and African hands, brought here over centuries, some by choice and many not, built its roads, its fields, and eventually, its future. Today, Mauritius is known to most of the world as a honeymoon destination, a place where couples watch the sunset over Le Morne, Brabant, a great stone mountain that rises out of the sea like a sleeping giant, a place where families walk along Belle Mer Beach in the early morning, when the sand is cool and the footprints disappear behind them with the tide. But there is another Mauritius, a quieter one that does not appear in the travel brochures, and rarely in the postcards. It exists in glass office towers in Ebni, a business district built from nothing in the last 20 years, rising out of what used to be open sugarcane fields. It exists in the quiet offices of law firms and fund administrators, where papers move more often than people do. And it exists, in a very real sense, in the bank accounts of some of the wealthiest people on the African continent. Let us slow down here and look closely, gently, the way you might look at a single wave before it breaks, to understand how a small island of just over 1 million people became something so important to global finance. We have to go back a little, not far, just a few decades. In the late 20th century, Mauritius depended almost entirely on sugar. Its economy rose and fell with the price of cane, the way a small boat rises and falls with the swell of the sea. It was vulnerable, and its leaders knew it. So, in the early 1990s, something changed. Mauritius began to build a different kind of industry. Not factories, not farms, paper, structures, companies that existed, technically, on the island, but whose real business happened somewhere else entirely, often thousands of miles away, in Johannesburg, or Lagos, or Nairobi, or Antananarivo. The idea was simple, and in its own way, quite elegant. A company operating in, say, Kenya, could set up a holding structure in Mauritius. Because of tax treaties Mauritius had carefully signed with dozens of countries, moving money through the island could mean paying very little tax at all, sometimes almost none. It was legal, it still often is, but it meant that money which might have stayed in Nairobi, or Accra, or Antananarivo, quietly passed through Mauritius instead, and often kept moving from there. Picture it like a river, gentle at first, flowing outward from across the African continent, converging here, on this small island, before spreading out again toward the wider world. Not loud, not dramatic, just a slow, steady current, moving through the calm blue water, mostly unseen. Over time, this brought remarkable prosperity to Mauritius itself. The skyline of Port Louis, the capital, began to change. Modern towers appeared beside colonial buildings that still carry the soft, weathered look of French and British rule. Ebni grew from sugarcane fields into what people here now call the Cybercity, filled with fund administrators, law firms, and financial consultants, working quietly behind tinted glass. And this is where the story gently turns, the way a path in a garden turns without warning, revealing something you did not expect to see. Because along with legitimate business, something else began to travel down that same calm river. Wealth that did not always want to be seen. Fortunes connected to political power. Money tied to businesses that, in their home countries, face difficult questions. Not all of it, of course. Most transactions here are ordinary, unremarkable, simply business. But some of it was different. In recent months, this quiet side of Mauritius has drawn new attention. Reports describe French financial investigators traveling to the island to question a businessman from Madagascar, a man whose companies span mining, trade, and logistics across the region. His name has appeared in multiple legal proceedings, connected to allegations involving corruption and the movement of money across borders, including through structures based partly in Mauritius. Courts in Madagascar have issued international arrest warrants. Assets connected to his businesses have reportedly been frozen in more than one country. We should be careful here, and gentle, the way you are careful walking near the edge of something fragile. These are allegations, investigations that are still unfolding. Nothing has been finally decided, but the story itself tells us something true about this island. It shows us, quietly, how far the river can travel, and how many places it can touch, before anyone truly notices where it began. Let's step back outside again, into the light. Drive along the coastal road on a quiet afternoon, and you will pass fishing villages, where wooden boats rest gently on the sand, waiting for evening, when the fishermen will push them back into the water. Children play near the shoreline. Someone is always selling fresh coconuts from a small stand, the green husks stacked neatly beside a rusted knife. This is the Mauritius most visitors know. Warm, welcoming, unhurried. The kind of place where a stranger might greet you simply because the afternoon light made them feel like smiling. There is a phrase people use here, in Mauritian Creole, "Kapov," roughly meaning, is possible, or it can be done. It captures something about the spirit of the island. Adaptable, open, willing to find a way. That same spirit, in a way, shaped the island's financial rise. Mauritius did not have oil. It did not have vast mineral wealth, the way some of its African neighbors do. What it had was location, and law, and a government willing to build an entire industry around moving other people's money efficiently and quietly. Kapov, in its own way, applied here too. Let us walk now through Port Louis itself, slowly, the way you might explore an old city you have only just arrived in. The market in the center of town is loud, but softly loud, filled with the smell of spices, dried fish, and fresh mangoes stacked in careful pyramids. Traders call out gently, more invitation than demand. Above the market, colonial buildings still stand, painted in soft yellows and blues, their shutters slightly faded by decades of sun and salt air. Nearby, the old harbor sits quietly beneath Signal Mountain, its slopes green and steep, watching over the city the way it has for 2 centuries. Fishing boats and cargo ships share the same water here, an easy, unspoken agreement between the old rhythms of the island and the newer ones brought by global trade. Somewhere close by stands the Apravasi Ghat, a small stone building where indentured laborers from India first arrived, over 150 years ago, to work the sugar fields after slavery ended. It is a quiet place now, almost forgotten by the busy streets around it, but it holds gently the memory of how so many Mauritian families first came to call this island home. A short walk from the harbor, the financial district feels like a different world entirely. Glass towers reflect the light off the water. Men and women in tailored suits move quietly between buildings, carrying laptops instead of baskets. There is very little noise here, no market cries, just the soft hum of air conditioning, and the occasional closing of a car door. It is strange, in a peaceful way, how close these two worlds sit to one another. The fisherman selling his morning catch, and the fund administrator managing accounts that may hold more money than that fisherman will see in several lifetimes, are sometimes only a few streets apart. This is one of the quiet tensions living inside Mauritius today. The offshore industry has brought real prosperity. Jobs in finance, insurance, and law now support thousands of Mauritian families. Roads have improved. Schools have improved. Life expectancy has risen. In many ways, This small island has become one of the most stable and prosperous nations in the region, a place often held up as a model for what African development might look like. And yet, researchers and journalists have also pointed, gently but firmly, to a harder truth sitting beside that success. Studies into cross-border tax treaties have suggested that some African nations lose meaningful government revenue each year, money that might otherwise have funded hospitals, schools, or roads, because of structures rooted through jurisdictions like Mauritius. It is not a simple story of villains and victims. It is more complicated than that. Mauritius did not create global inequality, but it became, quietly, one of the paths that wealth learned to travel along, moving away from the places that may have needed it most. Let's return to the coast for a while, and let the story breathe. In the south of the island, near Chamarel, the land rises into gentle hills covered in sugarcane and tea. Waterfalls fall softly here, framed by tropical forest, the sound of water meeting rock a quiet, constant presence in the air. Nearby, the famous seven-colored earths lie in soft ridges of red, brown, purple, and gold, formed by volcanic minerals cooling unevenly over thousands of years. Visitors often stand here in silence, simply watching the colors shift gently as clouds pass overhead. It is worth remembering, standing in a place like this, how old this island truly is, and how briefly, in comparison, its financial industry has existed. Mauritius was shaped by volcanic fire millions of years ago. Its offshore economy was shaped by policy decisions made within the last 30. One moves in geological time, the other moves in fiscal years and quarterly reports. And yet today, both exist here together, side by side, the ancient and the very new. Not far from Chamarel lies the Black River Gorges, a wide stretch of national park covering much of the island's southwest. Here, the pace slows even further. Native ebony trees, some of the last of their kind on the island, grow quietly in the shade. Rare birds move through the canopy, the pink pigeon among them, a species once nearly lost entirely, now slowly, carefully, brought back from the edge through years of patient conservation work. Walking these trails, it is easy to forget entirely about offices and treaties and investigations far away. Here, there is only the sound of leaves and distant birdsong, and the soft crunch of earth underfoot. As the afternoon light softens, drive north toward Grand Bailly, one of the island's most popular coastal towns. Yachts rest gently in the marina, their white hulls glowing faintly gold in the late sun. Restaurants along the waterfront begin to fill, quietly, with both tourists and wealthy residents, some of whom have made Mauritius their permanent home, drawn not only by the beaches, but by favorable tax residency programs designed specifically to attract international investors and high-net-worth individuals. This, too, is part of the modern story here. Mauritius has actively invited global wealth to settle, not just pass through. Investment programs allow foreign nationals to gain residency by purchasing property above a certain value. Family offices, quiet firms that manage the fortunes of wealthy families, have increasingly opened outposts here, drawn by political stability, favorable tax arrangements, and, of course, the simple, undeniable beauty of the place. Why manage a fortune from a cold, gray city, when it can be managed here instead? Beside warm water and swaying palms. There is something very human in that choice, even if the financial mechanics behind it are complicated. People are drawn to comfort, to beauty, to places that feel calm. Money, in its own way, seeks the same things people do. As evening falls over Grand Bailly, the sky slowly turns shades of orange and soft pink, reflected in the still water of the marina. Somewhere nearby, boat gently rocks against its mooring. The sound of the sea remains constant, patient, indifferent to everything happening in the offices closer to town. Not far offshore, small islands scatter the northern coast, quiet dots of green rising from the blue. Some are nature reserves, home to birds and tortoises found nowhere else on Earth. Others are simply empty, visited only by the occasional fisherman or a slow-passing boat. From a distance, they look like something painted rather than real, soft green shapes floating on a surface of glass. Let's move inland once more, toward the central plateau, where the pace of life slows even further. Small towns like Curepipe sit here, often wrapped in soft mist in the early morning, cooler than the coast, quieter too. Colonial-era buildings stand alongside modern shops. Church bells occasionally ring in the distance. Life here feels, in many ways, untouched by the financial world unfolding closer to the coast. It is easy, walking through towns like this, to forget entirely about holding companies and tax treaties and international investigations. Here, there are simply people, living their lives, much as people anywhere do. Children walking home from school in neat uniforms. Elderly men sitting quietly outside small shops, watching the street. Vendors selling roti and warm samosas from small stalls, steam rising gently into the cool afternoon air. And yet, in a quiet way, everyone here is connected to that other Mauritius, whether they realize it or not. The taxes collected or not collected from international structures shape government budgets. The jobs created by the financial sector support entire families. The reputation of the island, whether described as a stable financial hub, or, less kindly, as a tax haven, shapes how the rest of the world sees this place, and how much investment continues to arrive. Consider, for a moment, the quiet mechanics of how the system actually works, described gently, without judgment. A company is formed here, on paper, often little more than a name, an address, and a director appointed by a local firm. It may never have an office. It may never employ a single person on the island. But under Mauritian law, and under the treaties Mauritius has signed with dozens of nations, that company can be considered a resident here, entitled to the low rates and favorable treatment the island offers. Money moves through it, from one country to another, and along the way, a portion of what might once have been paid in tax quietly remains instead in the hands of whoever owns that distant company. None of this requires anything dramatic. No suitcases of cash, no hidden vaults, just careful paperwork, patient lawyers, and a system built, piece by piece, over 30 years, to make the movement of wealth as smooth and as gentle as the water inside the reef. It is worth remembering, too, that Mauritius is far from alone in offering this kind of service. Jersey does something similar, in the cold waters near the coast of France. The Cayman Islands does something similar, in the warm waters near the coast of America. Luxembourg, landlocked and unassuming, plays a comparable role in Europe. Mauritius simply became, over time, the version of the story written for Africa, and increasingly, for parts of Asia as well. Its double taxation agreements reaching toward India, and further east still. Let's watch the ocean again for a while, and let these thoughts settle, the way sand settles slowly after a wave has passed. Further east, near the resort town of Trou-d'Eau-Douce, small wooden boats carry visitors out toward Isle aux Cerfs, a small island fringed with white sand and turquoise shallows. Here, the water is so clear you can see the seabed clearly from a boat, pale sand and dark patches of coral passing gently beneath the hull. Visitors picnic quietly beneath casuarina trees, their needle-like leaves whispering softly in the wind. It is, without exaggeration, one of the most beautiful places many travelers will ever see. And it is worth noticing gently that this beauty is not separate from the financial story we have been telling. It is, in fact, part of what draws so much wealth here in the first place. A fortune can be managed from almost anywhere in the world today, with a laptop and a stable internet connection. But people, wealthy or otherwise, still choose where they want to live, where they want to raise their children, where they want to watch the sunset each evening. Mauritius offers both a favorable financial environment and a genuinely beautiful place to call home. That combination, more than any single law or treaty, may be the island's real advantage. As the boat returns slowly toward the mainland in the late afternoon, the water turns gold, then rose, then a deep, quiet blue. Fishermen head home for the evening. Somewhere behind us, the island's hills fade into soft silhouette against the darkening sky. Let's turn now, gently, toward the island's less visited corners, the places tourists rarely reach, but which say something quietly important about Mauritius as a whole. To the southeast lies Ma Bourg, a small historic town facing the very bay where French forces once fought a famous naval battle against the British in the early 1800s, part of the long contest for control of this island and its position along vital trade routes to India. The town today is calm, almost sleepy. Fishing boats bob gently near a small market. An old museum nearby holds fragments of that history, cannonballs, ship's instruments, quiet reminders that this small island has always mattered more strategically than its size might suggest. It sat, and still sits, along important lines of global trade and movement, first of goods and empire, now of capital and finance. Further south still, the coastline grows wilder, rockier, more exposed to the open ocean. Waves here break harder against black volcanic stone. Fewer resorts, fewer crowds, just wind and salt spray, and the sound of the sea working steadily against the land, the way it has for millions of years, patient beyond any human timescale, and far beyond the main island itself. Nearly 600 kilometers away lies Rodriguez, a smaller, quieter sibling to Mauritius, part of the same nation, but with its own gentle rhythm entirely. Life moves even more slowly there. Fishing remains central to daily life. Tourism exists, but softly, without the scale seen on the main island. It is easy to forget, from the busy towers of Ebni, that this too is Mauritius, a reminder that behind every financial headline, there are always quieter, gentler corners of a country simply continuing their ordinary lives. Let's come back now, gently, to where this story truly lives, in the space between these two. Mauritius, the paradise and the paperwork, existing together, inseparable, like the reef and the ocean beyond it. In recent years, international pressure on jurisdictions like Mauritius has grown. Global organizations have pushed for greater transparency, requiring more information to be shared between countries about who truly owns and benefits from these offshore structures. Mauritius has responded gradually, tightening some of its regulations, improving oversight of its financial sector, working to move away from its earlier reputation as a jurisdiction with limited transparency. Progress here has been real, though slow, the way meaningful change in any complex system tends to be. Government officials on the island have often described this evolution carefully, framing Mauritius not as a shadow destination for hidden wealth, but as a legitimate, well-regulated financial center, a genuine gateway connecting African, Asian, and international investors. There is truth in that description too. Most of what happens here, most days, in most offices, is simply ordinary business, unremarkable, legal, ordinary in every sense. It is only the rarer cases, the investigations, the frozen assets, the international arrest warrants, that draw the world's attention. The way a single dark cloud draws the eye even on an otherwise clear, calm sky. As we near the end of this journey together, let's return one final time to the coast, to watch it from the water itself. A small boat drifts gently near the reef, engine off, rocking softly with the waves. From here, the whole island seems to glow, mountains turning deep blue against an orange sky, the lights of Port Louis beginning to flicker on in the distance. It is difficult, in a moment like this, to hold both truths about Mauritius at once. The paradise, undeniable, real, breathtaking, and the quiet financial machinery, complicated, sometimes controversial, moving wealth across borders in ways most visitors will never see or think about. But perhaps that is simply what this island is. Not one story, but two, existing together, the way the reef and the open ocean exist together, separated by nothing more than a thin, quiet line of water. Mauritius did not choose to become what it is by accident. Its people, its leaders, made deliberate choices, decades ago, to build something new from very little. That choice brought genuine prosperity to many Mauritians. It also, quietly, made this small island a meaningful piece in a much larger, more complicated puzzle, one involving fortunes, family offices, and sometimes, fortunes under scrutiny. As night falls fully over the island, the stars begin to appear, one by one, over the dark water. Somewhere out there, beyond the reef, container ships and cargo vessels continue their slow journeys across the Indian Ocean, much as they have for centuries. And somewhere closer, in quiet offices now empty for the evening, paperwork sits still on desks, holding companies and structures, resting until morning, when the slow, steady work of moving money will begin again. But for now, none of that matters. For now, there is only the sound of water gently meeting sand, the soft call of a night bird somewhere in the palms, and the quiet, endless patience of an island that has seen sugar barons, colonial rulers, fishermen, bankers, and dreamers come and go, and has simply continued being itself, beautiful, complicated, and calm, resting quietly beneath the stars. Perhaps that is the truest way to understand a place like this, not through numbers, or headlines, or investigations alone, but through its light, its water, and the quiet rhythm of daily life that continues here. Regardless of what happens far away in courtrooms and financial ministries, the fishermen of Mauritius will still push their boats into the bay tomorrow morning. The market traders of Port Louis will still call out gently over baskets of mango and dried fish. The mist will still settle softly over Curepipe before burning away by mid-morning. And somewhere in Ebony, behind tinted glass, the quiet, patient work of moving the world's money will continue too, largely unseen, largely unremarked upon, the way it has for 30 years now. Mauritius will still be here tomorrow morning, the sun rising slowly over the same calm sea, the same fishermen pushing their same wooden boats gently back into the water, beginning again, as they always have. The reef will still hold back the ocean's full force, the way it always has, protecting the quiet lagoon within. And somewhere between the beauty and the balance sheets, between the paradise and the paperwork, this small island will continue, quietly, to be exactly what it has always been. Complicated, resilient, and in its own gentle way, unforgettable. And perhaps, in the end, that gentle continuity is the real story of this island. Not simply wealth, hidden or otherwise, but resilience. A small place in a vast ocean, shaped by history it did not fully choose, yet still finding, quietly, its own particular way forward, one calm, unhurried day at a time.